Welcome to the Chicago TARDIS panel on Doctor Who board game creation. I'm your host, Stephen Warren Hill, and my co-host, I don't know what corner of the screen he's on for you guys, but he's down there at the bottom for me. Say hi.
Hi, guys. How you doing? I just wanted to, this is Nick Seidler. I just wanted to kind of give an update because this is one of the Gaming Citadel's panels. I wanted to remind people that if they were interested in playing in tonight's Doctor Who role-playing game, which is called The Crimes of the Upper Atmosphere, you can still sign up for that. If you go to the Chicago TARDIS Facebook page, look for the post for that, and then feel free to email if that's something that you want to do. I do know that the people that played in the role-playing game last night had an epic adventure that was really a lot of fun. And if anybody has an interest or has never role-played before and wants to try it, I do want to recommend that as an opportunity for them. So back to you, Steve.
All right, thank you, Nick. So Nick is being my co-host as usual for this panel, but he's also on the panel. So he's doing a dual role on this one. And I'm sure that Nick will do just fine. Anyway, all you guys are good friends of mine. I'm happy to introduce you to your panel moderator. And I believe that is Libby this time, right, Libby?
Yep, that's me.
All right, so say hi to Libby Shea and take it away, Libby.
Thanks, Steve. Hey, everyone out there on Facebook land and YouTube land. I'm Libby Shea. You might know me as the Game Citadel manager. I am with three very good friends of mine, and we will be talking about board game creation today. So, guys, if you guys want to introduce yourself, starting with Brandon.
Hello, I'm Brandon. I'm a very good friend and also Libby's husband. I'm one of the game room lieutenants. I've also been volunteering with Chicago TARDIS for probably 6 years, I think now. I think one less than Libby, maybe. Anyways, quite a while. So I'm excited to talk about all the board games that we like to play and occasionally create. Yeah, so carry on. So Nick.
There's two Nicks.
Go ahead. There's two Nicks. Right.
Which one do you want me to go?
Go ahead. Nick Orchard. Let's go with you.
Okay. Hi, I'm Nick Orchard. I am just one of the volunteers in the Game Citadel. I've been a volunteer at Chicago TARDIS for, I think, 4 years. And, it's fun to design and help play games with, all my good friends.
Hi, everybody. I'm Nick Seidler. I am the front of the house manager at the main stage at Chicago TARDIS when we're in person and helping co-host our virtual convention here. I've been involved with the convention in a volunteer capacity since the very beginning, and I'm very proud to be a part of Chicago TARDIS, and I've helped do game stuff for many years, and so I am proud to be on this panel. I'm glad that Libby asked me.
Yeah, it's great having you guys. Nick and Nick, haven't seen you guys in person in a while. But it is what it is. Welcome to board game creation, everyone. Let's start off with this. If anybody on Facebook or YouTube has any questions, please post them in the chat, and our moderators will get us the questions and we'll get them hopefully answered for you guys. Brandon, if you could do a quick intro about the Game Citadel at Chicago TARDIS, what kind of games we have, what kind of things we create.
Sure. Yeah. So we have our own space in when we have a physical Chicago TARDIS, we would traditionally have our own space where people are welcome to drop in and out at any point during the whole weekend. We try to stay open during all of the standard hours of operation, so that if there's something going on as far as panels, autos, photos, stuff like that, the game room will try to be open pretty much the whole weekend. So that if people need a break or they want to, take a quick, bit of time to relax or play games or see what new things we've created over the past year, they can stop in, check out our board games, play their own board games, or just sit at one of our tables and have a place to talk with new people or meet up with their group who might split off and. Some people go to one panel or the dealer's room or taking autos and photos. That's a good place for people to recollect and meet up and have just a pretty relaxing wind down time during a pretty eventful weekend. So we have a lot of games that we've created. It's one of the things that we pride ourselves on is that Chicago TARDIS is one of the places that you can see a lot of really creative fan-made games, as well as some of the licensed games and things like that as well, that are almost all Doctor Who themed. Yeah, I mean, people can play in larger games or short small group games, things like that. We try to create games that are made for a variety of skill levels or ages or group sizes, all sorts of things like that. A lot of people would be familiar with the Rory Adventure game, which is physically our largest game. It takes up 5 of the tables at the Westin, all laid end to end. It follows the entire timeline of Rory through his own chronological path through time. So it crosses over itself probably about 400 times. It's a lot of fun. It takes quite a long time to play if there's a large group of people, and it's definitely something that can be an eye catcher when people enter the room. So yeah, that's just kind of what we're there for, is just to be a place that people can feel comfortable and relaxed, and see a lot of new fan-made creations. So.
Well, thank you for that introduction. Going around the Zoom call, I guess, starting with Brandon, what games have you helped work on for the game room?
Sure. So the game that I am the most closely worked on is a copy of, if I can get this to work with my background, Kerblam, which I debuted last year for Chicago TARDIS 2019. I can go over this a little bit later, but it's like a push your luck, sort of like zombie dice sort of thing. You have these little pods and you shake dice and try and get a bunch of boxes. I just got 2 out of 2 on this one. Nice. So yeah, you're trying to get a bunch of packages on the dice. We can talk more about that later if we get into specific games, but I've also worked on Pin the Face on Cassandra. It's about as simple as it sounds. It takes about 20 seconds to play, and it's one thing that gets people to laugh and point, and it stands out. So I think it's fun. Journey to the Center of the TARDIS is a big one that I collaborated with Nick and Libby, and I think Apple's helped with that, or Nick Orchard helped with that one as well. And some other of our friends helped. That was a much bigger collaborative game that we can show off later. Yeah, and those are the major ones that I've worked on myself.
I kind of joined up with the Game Citadel a little after most of the big games that we've have at TARDIS were designed. So I've helped with a little bit of the play testing and some of the rules of most of the games. But one of the ones that I'm actually helped create was a modified rule set for a social deduction game called Zygon Invasion, which is been a lot of fun. Besides that, nothing is really coming to mind of what I've personally helped with. Most of the stuff I've worked on has either not come to fruition or it's still super early in the development process.
I've had a chance to work on a lot of the games because I've been involved in it for a while. And the design of the games is something that we've done at Chicago TARDIS for a while, and it's really meant to include a lot of the people who are in the game Citadel. As Libby pointed out at the beginning of this panel, we try to premiere at least one, sometimes multiple games in a year. And we've had a chance to do that now for fairly close to about 10 years now, or at least like 6 or 8 at least. Some of the original games, Brandon already talked about the Rory Adventure game, which is a really long game that actually spans about 20 feet. Arthur Darvill played that last year at the convention, which was a big crowd draw. He enjoyed playing the game himself. It was a game about him and his character, which he really liked. And then he also told stories about him filming the show while he did it, which was really great. There's a complex game called Journey to the Center of the TARDIS, in which you have to collect things to repair the TARDIS to save it before time zombies get you. We have simple card games that we've worked on to include the Power of Three. And then we've also created a memory game called Memory Worm, which is actually very frustrating to a lot of the players. So imagine memory, but if you accidentally draw a Memory Worm card, you reshuffle all the cards and play it again. So there's additional games that we have, Wibbly Wobbly Timey Wimey, which is sort of an adaptation of a popular movement game called Suro, a tile game. And there's additional games. Some of the other staff at Chicago TARDIS who've been in the game Citadel have done a Doctor Who version of Love Letters. We have some special board games we've made to include the Canine game, the Polly adventure game, to celebrate Annika Wills, and a number of other games that there's enough of them that we can't talk about all of them. And what's fun about that is at the game Citadel, you can stop in and play for a couple hours, or you can stop in and find a game that plays, like Brandon said, in 30 seconds. So that's one of the fun things about the convention. Back to you, Libby.
Cool. Yeah, we've got a lot of games now. I've helped out with pretty much all of the ones that they have listed. And we do have a special surprise coming up near the end of the panel. Just because we are virtual does not mean that we slacked in our duties of creating a new game for you guys. We do have a new rule set, as Nick Orchard kind of alluded to. It's called Zygon Invasion. We will be debuting that rule set in the comments on Facebook and probably YouTube. So you guys can have the rule set to play. We play tested about a week ago with about 9 of us, and it was a lot of fun to play. So we really look forward to debuting that for you all. Okay, let's get into kind of how, the process of creating the board games, all the cool stuff that we have in the game room. So anyone, if you want to speak up, the question is, what inspires you to make a game?
I haven't, none of the ones that I've worked on have so far been premiered except for Zygon Invasion. But one of the ones that I'm actively kind of working on, I got inspired to do it just because I thought that with Doctor Who, you have 13 or 14 or an infinite number of regenerations of the Doctor to play with. So I figured it'd be really cool if you could incorporate that into some type of betting game where, you had the Doctor is trying to beat Daleks, and you had to use, each regeneration that you used, they got more powerful as you went, but you wanted to make sure that it stayed cohesive, and you wanted to make sure that you weren't burning resources too quickly. So that was someone I was kind of still in the process of putting together.
For me, I think sometimes we witness a game that's cool, or what inspires us or gives us the direction to do a game. I know that sometimes the game staff looks to see who the guests are going to be at Chicago TARDIS. There's a game that we invented about 2 or 3 years ago where the convention was hoping to have all 3 members of the Paternoster gang at the convention. So we had hoped to have all 3 of those actors there. So we actually invented a game called the Paternoster Gang. And it's a great search through London and kind of beat the aliens game that you have to play. And each adventure kind of happens together. So it's a little bit of a movement game and adventure game. And it just so happened that it didn't work out in terms of the guests, but who we have coming to the is sometimes one of the driving forces of how or why we create a game. Or when the 13th Doctor became the new Doctor, we created a special game, Unlucky 13, which is a game that where the Doctor has to fight 13 bad guys. And of course, that would be Jodie Whittaker's Doctor. The Doctor, of course, is lucky, but it's unlucky that there's 13 villains that they have to fight. So.
And we also use a 13-sided die for that one.
Yes,
I was proud of that addition.
Yes, a 13-sided die, which is fairly rare, but that's what makes the game unique and very fun. So.
Yeah, and going off of that, Nick, actually, with making the games based on what guests we have, we always hope that maybe one of the guests might wander in and see the appreciation that we have for them in game form, which was really cool when Arthur came in and played Rory Adventure Game. That's the kind of experience that we'd like the guests to have as well.
Yeah, we also had Annika Wills come in and play the Poly game, which was actually very nice. And there's some other games that we have, and I have weirdly disappeared, and I don't know how or why. So I am magical, which is awesome.
Nick got sucked into a time vortex.
Apparently. So I didn't change anything on my computer. So that was kind of fun. So I figured out sun literally shined into the camera while I was doing that. So haven't seen much of that. But to finish up, Annika Wills came and played the game, and we've had some other people. And I'll talk about, there's also a secondary level of creation to some of our games, and that is members of the game Citadel, including Nick and Libby and others, have run Doctor Who role-playing games. And that means being creative and coming up with a Doctor Who adventure for role players to experience. And just because we're talking about guests who have come in and played the game, Libby had an opportunity to do a sequel adventure with one of the actors from the TV show Class after Class had gone off the air. And that was a very special opportunity to see them role play their actual character. What would they do if they could control the plot, which was really cool. Maybe you want to talk about that, Libby.
Yeah, I can touch on it real quick. For me as a game master, that was one of my highlight games. It was a lot of fun to have that happen. I stayed up quite late the night before finishing off the character sheets. We thought that we'd have multiple guests play in that game, so I created all of their character sheets in our system that we run. And it turned out just to be the one, which is totally fine. It was a lot of fun. There were 4 people at the table playing, and that was definitely a good experience. Yeah. So I guess go ahead, Brandon.
Yeah, touching just a little bit more on like how we decide what games to create. A lot of times also it's based off of like episodes that we thought were particularly appropriate, or like game mechanics that exist in existing board games that we think we can adapt and make work. And a lot of times those kind of like will kind of mesh together and work hand in hand with each other. So from like Jodie Whittaker's first season, the episode Kerblam gave me inspiration just because I wanted to build the box, if nothing else, to make a game that would work with Kerblam. And then I thought about what sort of game would work, and I thought about the all-important bubble wrap that's in all of the boxes and how that could be like a push your luck mechanic, because you don't know if the bubble you're going to pop is going to have an explosive gas in it. So I sort of decided to adapt that and figured that if I sort of based the game off of like the beginnings of the rules of zombie dice, it could be cool where you have all these individual bubbles. There's 4 of them that you can choose from, and they all have like different sort of balanced dice that I've created. And you try and get as many boxes as you can without getting like a bubble explosion, which will kind of like bust you for the round. So a lot of times it's episodes / mechanics that I really like and try to adapt. There was another episode, the Saranga Conundrum with the Pating, I thought would be interesting for a game. It's not a game we've been able to make yet, but it's one that I think I want to work on in the future, where there's a Pating on your ship in space and it's kind of sabotaging all of your systems, and you have to try and keep your ship from failing and killing everyone on board, while also trying to capture or jettison the Pating or something like that. So a lot of times it's episodes, things that are that are currently going on that you think could be interesting to adapt into a game, and sometimes it's mechanics based on games that exist. So
if you want to, Libby, I do have the opportunity to screen share here, and I can show at least one or two of our games while we're producing them and play testing them, if you have an interest in me sharing that. So
Yeah, go for it.
So I will do a quick screen share here, and so that you guys can see what's going on. So this is a very early part of when we were trying to design the Canine game, which is a very, very simple board game. And you can actually see that we originally did the black and white printouts here. And as we were designing the game, we were like literally working in Paint Shop and some other programs trying to figure out and design exactly what the game would look like. And then eventually we printed out in a black and white version, and we play test it before we do kind of the final design of it. So this is like the Canine board game laid out on the ground as 4 pieces of printout, this black and white off of a regular printer. And then later what we do is we print it out in actual color and then stick it onto a game board. So when you have a chance, eventually you get the final product, which ends up looking pretty nice. So we put it together, we brand it, we make sure that it's colored, we get the pieces, and you can see it kind of ends up looking pretty good, just to show you a couple of them. So just wanted to share a little bit of that process of part of doing the games as well is having to play test them, because you can't just go like, oh, this game's going to work fine. It'll automatically be a hit, right? So part of really what needs to be done is for people to give the game a whirl and sit around and test it and play it. And I'll just show a picture or two here of we get together with some of the people in the staff, and we sit around and we'll actually play test and play the games that we have. And so here's a play test of Wibbly Wobbly Timey Wimey going on, and in the background you can actually see the Canine game over Libby's left shoulder there. So just trying to make sure that the games work right, and sometimes that means trying them over and over, right? And making sure that they work the way you want to. Here's us playing Anna Kasa's version of Doctor Who Love Letters, so making sure that that works and plays properly, which works out pretty good. And then there's another example of us coming up here of trying a game that Rob Warnock helped us invent, which is a version of dominoes called Mexican Train Dominoes. But instead of using dominoes, we used all of the 12 doctors to create a game, which is fun to play. So it matches doctors. It's doctors matching. And I'll stop sharing, but I just wanted to show people some of that creative process. So.
Yeah, and that process we usually guess is going to take about an hour and a half or 2 hours, and it's more like 4 or 5. So a lot of writing down notes and slightly heated discussion on, oh, I think it'll work best this way, or no, we can't do that. It'll totally break the game. And so.
Yeah, especially when we dedicate time to actually sitting down and play testing one of these games. I know that I think it was before last year's Chicago TARDIS, we sat down and replay tested probably for the 3rd or 4th time Journey to the Center of the TARDIS. And it lasted, I think 2 or 3 hours, just one game, just us talking through mechanics and how we think some things should work in a larger group or in a smaller group, or what a game master should be doing in the middle of it. So yeah, that it can take a bit. That's not the first session, definitely won't be the last.
Even when we premiered Journey to the Center of the TARDIS, our rule set I thought was pretty solid, but after extensive play testing, we've redesigned the rules for the game to make it even better. And sometimes people ask us like, oh, can I get a copy of that game, or will I be able to do that? Yes, actually, it's our plan to share the games that we create for free. They're fan projects that are passion projects. And Libby will talk about that a little bit more, and kind of like where people can eventually find those. So.
Would you like to explain the fanzine?
Well, sure. Yeah, we have a fanzine that most of the Game Room Citadel work on, which is called the Diary of Doctor Who Role-Playing Games. And if you're really into RPGs, regardless of any of the 3 Doctor Who role-playing games, it's a great resource. I recommend people check that out online. We do take some of our games and actually publish them and put them in there. Publish isn't really the right word. We put them out there as a free fanzine download so that people can enjoy them. Always free, so that the fan-made passion projects are there. So we have put some of them together as standalone like downloads as PDFs. And that's something that we're still working on. It simply takes time to do that, and we don't always have as much time as we'd like, even when we're in quarantine, unfortunately.
So for all of you, I know that each of you have kind of mentioned either different components that are a part of these games or different mechanics. How do you come up with the unique mechanics or the unique components like the 13-sided dice for Unlucky 13?
I can't speak for anyone else, but for me, it's mostly just, oh, that's really cool. I want to try that. Or I wonder if that would actually work. Or I feel like that would be a fun mechanic that I don't see a lot of or I've never seen before in games.
Yeah, when it comes to things like dice and things like that, it helps when you are a group of RPG players and one of your side hobbies is shopping and looking at cool and unique dice anyways. So I kind of just happened upon some websites or Kickstarters that had like unique sided dice with, they had every number between, 2 and, or there's even one-sided dice that you can buy, but not much use in a one-sided die, I guess. They'll go with like 2 through all the way through like 30, and you can get almost every individual number, and they're all weirdly shaped but still roll fairly. So I just thought it was a cool thing. Nick had already come up with the idea for like Lucky 13, and I happened upon these dice and I bought them without telling him while he was still working on the rule set. And then when we went to play, or before we play tested it, when he came to kind of show off what he was working on, I gave him these 13-sided dice and said, "Here, this will be something that I think they'll make the game cooler and more unique and fun to play for people at Chicago TARDIS." But I guess I'll kind of say that like we create all these games, and Nick says we try to provide all the assets and things like that. We also try to design the game so that people can print them. So you don't necessarily have to have a 13-sided die. If you get like a D12 or something like that, you could even play with 2D6 or something like that. All these rule sets are some things that you can kind of fudge to work towards what you want them to or what you have available. So.
Mm-hmm. I'll add to what Brandon said. The question was, what is it that like inspires us to do some of the games? I'll say that there's 2 things. The first is most of our games, we try to include some Doctor Who specific element to the game. If you're going to make a Doctor Who game, what makes the Doctor Who game different than just the game itself? We try a little bit to stay away from strictly skinning games. But what I mean by that is just like keeping the game exactly the same and then putting something Doctor Who on it. To be fair, we have done that. We have a version of like Connect 4, which is Doctors versus Monsters, and we just literally skinned that with Doctor Who stuff. It's still basically your Connect 4 game. But for our really original games, we try to do something unique, and that means including a Doctor Who component to it, right? So maybe that's a regeneration mechanic or a return mechanic that's different than how you would regularly play the game. The other thing that I would say is when you're being creative or you're thinking about a game and how it might work is to look for things. If you game a lot, you notice that certain things happen. So for example, in the Rory Adventure game, there are 2 mechanics that happen when you roll the dice. One is if you roll the number 7. And if you know anything about 2d6, the number 7 is the highest number that will show up, strictly because of the bell curve that's created when you roll 2 6-sided dice. So the other thing that we made as a unique mechanic was if you roll doubles, regardless of what the number is. That's very rare. It only happens 6 out of 36 times. You can reduce that number 1 out of 6 times, whatever that is. But it doesn't happen as often as people think it does. And so if you know that how dice roll or the percentages that dice show up, sometimes you build mechanics that something special happens when something rare occurs, right? So that's another thing I think we sometimes look for is kind of the rarity of certain successes. So
Yeah, I'll definitely echo what you said, Nick. We try and make a little spin on everything that we do. There, as you said, there are a couple of games that we have just skinned. And one of the games actually I helped out with was the Flux game, not the licensed Flux game. We created a version of Doctor Who Flux before the licensed version came out. And it is playable at the Chicago TARDIS game room. We have both versions for people that want to play. And when you come into the game room, the games that we have set out are pretty much all the custom games. We do have most, if not all, of the licensed versions of Doctor Who games. But in order to play those, if you want to, you need to come in and ask for them. That's mostly because we do work, like the staff works really hard throughout the year to be able to create these games and these cool, unique mechanics and components for everyone that comes in. And, you know, we kind of want to highlight that a little bit. So we have a question here from Steve. What is the most clever or interesting single game mechanic you've used for a game?
Ooh, that's a great question, actually. One that makes you think for a minute. So, I'll chime in if that's okay with you guys.
Yeah.
In the game that we built, Wibbly Wobbly Timey Wimey, it's possible for a player to get a wormhole card that they can place onto the board at a specific time in the game. And because of that wormhole, you can actually create time loops within the path of where your TARDIS is moving. And you have the opportunity to actually trap other players so they cannot escape the play of the game, which is kind of neat. So in the history of Doctor Who, there's like time loops and time rams, and we built some of those into the Wibbly Wobbly game. But I think it's a really neat mechanic to be able to kind of trap your opponent as if they were trapped forever in a time loop. And they then lose their turn and they're out of the game. And it's a unique way to knock people out of the game. So I think that's a pretty unique mechanic.
I think another unique mechanic from our Rory adventure game was that if you're cosplaying Rory, you get an extra space on your rolls, I think is what we came up with. And we also wrote in that if you are Arthur Darvill cosplaying Rory, you get 2 extra spaces. But if you're just Arthur Darvill and you're not cosplaying Rory, then you don't get any spaces. So, and sadly, Arthur just came as himself to the game.
So, and that was actually written into the rules, I believe, like 7 years before Arthur ever played the game, which was hilarious. And we read the rules out loud to him, and it was actually in the rules. Mm-hmm. So that was pretty good.
Yeah, we just wrote it like, maybe eventually we'll have Arthur, and maybe eventually he might play the game, and maybe he'll be wearing his Rory outfit to the game. So, and then years later we come to that. So
I think for me the most interesting mechanic I've helped with was actually in the Zygon Invasion game, was that in the other social deduction games like Mafia Werewolf, the medic's job is just to heal or save other people, where in this one we ended up coming up with the fact that, well, the medic can't be anyone but the doctor, so they have 1 free regeneration that if someone targets them, either the Zygons or the unit soldiers accidentally voting off an innocent person, they regenerate once.
Yeah, that's a cool mechanic for that game, actually. I like that.
We've got quite a few unique mechanics in some of these games. I think my personal favorite is actually in the Doctor Who Love Letters game. There's, companions, there's doctors, but I think my favorite, with Ten and Donna being my favorite, doctor companion grouping. Donna is in there with the lowest level, and then if you have her at the end of the game, she goes up to the level that the doctor is, which I think is 7, considering the TARDIS I think is 8. So if you have her at the end of the round, she bumps up to 7, which I thought was a brilliant nod back to that episode, and I loved I love Donna. She's one of my favorites. So that I think is my favorite mechanic.
This is not so much a game mechanic that I want to mention, but all of us have additional fandoms that we love and that we're a part of. And so sometimes when we have certain like games that we invent or work on or help create for Doctor Who, it's fun to throw nods into other fandoms. So we have a couple of Easter eggs that are in the Paternostra game, the Paternostra Gang game. So if you go and investigate one of the colleges in the Paternostra game, you'll find that there's a secret society there. And what we used for that game was a picture of the Death Eaters from Harry Potter. So if you know Harry Potter and you get that card, you look at it and you're like, oh, the Doctor and the Paternostra game have to like defeat the secret society of bad guys, and you're like, they have to beat like the Death Eaters. Or there's other like hidden Easter eggs in some of our games, or if you know some additional fandoms or know Doctor Who spinoffs like Torchwood or Class, you'll know a little bit more than other people will.
I think that we're all really also proud of the Journey to the Center of the TARDIS game, especially after last year. We did a lot of reworking and balancing of the game, and we have a lot. I think there's a lot of really cool mechanics in that game. Probably way too many to explain on this stream, because each we have a bunch of different like item cards that you'll pick up as you go through the game. So like part of the game is sneaking into service corridors to avoid the time zombies, and there's each of the different doctors' sonic screwdrivers are represented as item cards, and the sonic screwdrivers will allow you to freely go in and out without having to make like a skill check roll to try and get in them. And that's just one of them. There's a lot of different cards with a lot of different effects, and I think it's really cool. As well as the different rooms in the game have their own like effects that can happen. So I think we put a lot of thought into that game, and I'm excited for the next time we can play that in person, because I don't know how we would play it on a I don't know how we would play this game in a virtual environment. It'd be pretty hard.
Just wanted to show off the board for that so that people know what game that is. If they've been to Chicago TARDIS, they may have seen this game on the table or possibly played it.
Yeah, and Journey to the Center of the TARDIS, that's definitely, as Brandon said, it's one of our favorite games. We don't get to play it often because it's not a short play at all.
Probably about 40 minutes if everyone knows the rules sort of game.
Yeah, on a good day, it'd be about 40 minutes. But especially with that game, like if you're with a group that wants to sit down and play a longer board game together and really get into it, this one's phenomenal to play. We had a lot of fun, and even the 2-3 hours that we took to play test it, it seemed like time just flew by. It was so much fun to play. So next question for you guys: what are some of the best tips for someone that's creating their first game, either Doctor Who versioned or just in general?
Start putting ideas down to paper.
Yeah. I would say like don't be afraid to just make something simple, just to like get your like sort of hands around like what's included in the process, and it'll get you comfortable figuring it out. Like if you just do something that you can print out like on 4 sheets of paper, like what Nick posted earlier, that's something you can design. Even if you can design that by hand, you can just draw, you get a little circle template or a soda can or a soda bottle lid, just draw circles around that for like your game spaces. And like it doesn't have to look good on your first draft, and the rules don't have to be right away. So don't let that like freeze you from starting, if that makes sense. So like just getting something down on paper, getting a rule set, it's not going to look like a full sheet of organized stuff right away. It's going to be like 12 bullet points, and none of them really make sense to anyone but you at first, maybe. And then, if you have someone that you can bounce those ideas off, that can help a lot, because sometimes you get stuck in your own headspace when you're trying to figure out rule sets for things. But yeah, just I think starting simple with a small game can help you figure out how that process works and how you can mentally work from, A to Z and get to a pretty cool game. So.
And the other thing too is don't get so attached to any one particular rule or mechanic that, like, if you can't figure out a way to make it balanced or for it to work or it's too expensive to actually have in the game, that like you just shut down. Like there's going to be some stuff that sounds really cool, but you just can't do it because it would require, $100 miniature, or it's really cool, but it doesn't balance the game well, or it's not fun against to be played against. So you kind of have to keep the end goal of it's supposed to be fun for everyone for the majority of the game.
Yeah, like when I started, I keep bringing up Kerblam, I know. When I started, I wanted to do like a crazy like trouble popper mechanism to throw the dice, and I tried for like a month or two trying to like, oh, can I reverse engineer how to make like this steel thing, spring up the dice so that they all fall in a specific way, and eventually I'm like, I just need to give up on this, get some cheap plastic domes and make it a shaker instead of a popper. For like a more finished project, I might do that in the future, but these were what allowed me to, debut the game. Otherwise, I'd have been like, I don't know, I'm still working on it and trying to figure it out. So, being willing to compromise is good. I agree.
The advice that I would give is make sure you play test your game. Play it again, play it again, play it again, and then take the advice of your play testers. Don't ignore what they're saying. If they're telling you this isn't fun or this doesn't make sense, it's not going to help you when you create this really cool Doctor Who game. And then they're like, yeah, TARDISes are also supposed to be able to go backwards in time. How come I can't like do this? And you're like, just cause isn't as good. And I really want to echo what Nick Orchard said, which I think was brilliant advice. And that is, don't get so connected to a rule that you're not willing to adjust it or, change it in a way that works better for the game. Some games you need to stick with the rules and just go, this is the way it's going to be. But I think, if a rule is a bad rule, don't keep it, right? So
there was a question real quick for Brandon.
Sure.
Where is it possible to get instructions on how to make your own Kerblam and the rules?
Whenever we get the next posting of the fanzine that we have, Nick might want to talk about the fanzine. It'll probably be, I'd be more than willing to share and include the rule sets for that, for Kerblam. Making it not so expensive. You don't even need really all of the poppers and things like, or the shakers and things like that. You can just have 4 sets of different dice and use them that way. So you can do that all DIY. So Nick, I don't know if you wanted to talk about that or anything.
Sure, yeah. Eventually, some of the games that we're talking about, and even Brandon's Kerblam game, for example, is still, I would say Kerblam is still a little bit in development, right? We haven't written out all the rules formally yet. I think you have actually, but like just really made sure that we play tested it for the right place.
Yeah,
I mentioned earlier about the Diary of Doctor Who role-playing games fanzine. You can search on Google for DDWRPG. And some of the games are in there, and I'll recommend going there and looking for those. Eventually, we will on that website post some of the games as their own, just the game downloaded, rather than having to try to find that game in an issue per se. But that's something that we're working on. It'll still take us a little bit of time to get together. So.
That's it for all the questions. Thank you all for joining. Everyone on Facebook, I did post the link to the rule set for Zygon Invasion so that you're more than welcome to download those. We'll probably be adding updates as we go. It's not a fully finalized version, but we wanted to get the rule set out there in case you have a large group of friends that you really want to game with. Over COVID, we did play it virtually, so it's possible.
In fact,
that's our gift to you.
I didn't mean to cut you off. I was going to say it was actually a very fun virtual gameplay in Zoom, because you can send messages secretly back and forth to people. So it actually worked as a great, lock-in Chicago TARDIS COVID game.
So back to you, Steve. Thank you, everyone.
Okay. Thanks, Libby. Thank you for answering my question, by the way. The mechanics, they fascinate me. And I think that they allow for the widest use of one's own creativity in the whole creation process. I want to say that when you're a kid, you play games, but I think most of us never think about the possibility of making those games. And when you're a kid, they make the games, right? And you might be a fan of a TV show or a movie or something. And all you can do when you're young is hope that someday they make a game out of it. What, if you don't mind, just take a minute. You still have a minute here. Can you answer this? When did you come to the realization that you could make these games yourself? When did that happen?
Probably when I joined the Chicago TARDIS gaming staff and realized that it was, possible. For me, the first game I really worked on by myself was the Doctor Who Flux custom game that we have. Again, not the licensed version. But I loved playing Flux. I thought it was a lot of fun, and I thought it was wrong that there wasn't a Doctor Who version of it yet. So I just like, let's do it. It is closer to a skin than anything. And then throughout the last couple of years, we've done more custom games and creating game mechanics. But yeah.
I'm actually going to disagree with Libby only because I want to talk up her work. And that is that I would argue that the Chicago TARDIS version of Flux is not a skin. I really feel like Flux skinned their own game for the Doctor Who game. All they did was add like 7 Doctor cards or 9 Doctor cards to their game. And that they called it a brand new game, and it's kind of not. Libby built custom rules, including custom victory and goal conditions, as well as villains that are not in the actual Doctor Who Flux licensed version of the game. So I recommend the fan version. I think hers is actually a better of the 2 games, but everybody has their own opinion. Try them both and let us know what you think. So.
All right. Well, fair enough. Thank you. Everybody, it was an interesting panel. I went for a walk and I put it on my headphones while I was walking. I listened to the whole thing all the way through. So that was awesome. So coming up next, we have a couple of pre-recorded panels. The first is the Big Finish Saturday panel. That kicks off at 3:00, followed by the Fraser Hines interview at 4:00. And we'll be back with our next live panel, Darkness Never Prevails, at 5:00 all times Central, GMT -6. Nick, do you have any housekeeping that you can add?
I just wanted to encourage people to make sure that they actually go online and check out some of our Artist Alley and vendors. I also want to remind people that if they did miss one of the Friday panels or even a panel earlier today, that those videos, those panels are still available on Facebook and also YouTube. And so if you felt like you missed some of the fun of Chicago TARDIS, you have the chance to still experience it virtually. Go back and watch that. There was a particularly great presentation yesterday on the St. John's ambulance badge that I kind of want to talk up again and recommend people watch. One of the most educational panels I've seen in a long time. And I really understand more both about Doctor Who and about the St. John's Society because of that. So.
All right. Thanks, Nick. And that wraps up Doctor Who board game creation. Great time, guys. Thank you. And onward, Chicago TARDIS.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.